So here we are, guys. We last did and dealt with this, and then we tried to look at the different types of exceptions that we might handle whenever a code of this nature is provided before us. Okay, now one thing that we are going to look at this time is just catching multiple exceptions. Right, and we read and they say that you can place as many statements as you need within a try block, and you can include as many catch blocks as you want to handle different exception types. So there is no restriction in terms of how many try blocks you should have and how many catch blocks you should have. So maybe you can have a pair, a try and a catch block, a try and a catch block for the different types of errors that you think might occur during compiling of your code during the runtime. This is what they are just basically saying. When a try block contains more than one statement, only the first error generating statement throws an exception. As soon as the exception occurs, the logic transfers the catch block, which leaves the rest of the statement in the try block unexecuted. It is very important that we note the following. As soon as the exception occurs, the logic transfers to the catch block, which leaves the rest of the statement in the try block unexecuted. So this is how it works. If you have multiple try blocks and multiple catch blocks, as immediately when the error occurs inside of the try block, it is never going to check any other try blocks that you will have. It will go straight to the catch block that will handle the error that has occurred, and then it will just throw that exception, whatsoever statement that you are having in there. When an exception is thrown and multiple catch blocks are present, the catch blocks are examined in the sequence until a match is found. This is very important. The matching catch block then executes and each remaining catch block is bypassed. Very, very important that we understand this. The first occurrence of error, that statement is catched inside of the try block, and then it will go and check the catch block that matches exactly the type of an error that occurred in the try block, and the rest of the try blocks and the rest of the catch blocks will be bypassed. This is so important that we understand this. Now suppose we are in this code and there are some changes that we would like to do. Let me just get rid of this. Let me just get rid of that. And then what we want to try to do is to code the following. Now suppose we have an integer number. I will just say this is num, and I will immediately assign it a value of 13, and let me just use a comma, and I have a denominator, and suppose the denominator is equals to 0, and I will have the result, and there's nothing inside of the result. Right, suppose now I declare an int which is an array, and I call this array an array, and I immediately populate this array with the values, suppose 23, 33 and 44. All right, that is fine. So suppose this is what I have an integer number 13, integer number 0, integer which is the result, and then I declare an integer of arrays, and I populate that with only 3 numbers inside. And then I want to have a try block. Try. So let me just take and say end try block. Very important. And now the first thing is this. What type of an error do I think will occur when I try to calculate the result inside of the try? So I will say that the result Okay, I want to calculate the result as what now? As the number divided by the denominator. Right. Why? Because I know there's a possibility that an error will occur here. And once that is done, I want the result to be equals to what now? The array at a specific element of the number. Array number 13. Right. Do I have the 13th element in here? Of course, I know that this is going to throw up an error. Also, that is going to throw up an error. But I want to look at the first occurrence of this error. Very, very important that we follow exactly what is happening here. Right, and then I will have a catch. And then in the catch, I know that the first one, result equals number divided by denominator, I will have divide by 0 exception that will be thrown there. So I go and I say divide by 0 exception, and then I just assign that as an error. Let me just say that is an error, and then I will just have a statement inside there, and I will just have a write line, and in this write line I will just say error occurred in the first catch block. Let me just say error occurred in the try block. In fact, here I want to be very, very specific. Error occurred in the first calculation of result. Very, very specific. Right, that is fine. And then I will have another write line. I will have another write line, and in this write line I will just say error. All I want to do inside there, I just want to have a write line, and I just want to take this object which I called error dot message. I know this one will be very specific. Remember, it is a method. This one, it's just a method. We dealt with that in the previous tutorial, so you might just want to go and check what we said about this. This is the first catch block that I have, but because I know there are two types of errors that can occur here, this will result in an exception, and this one will also have an exception. So I'm going to have one try block, but I'm going to have two catch blocks. So I will say catch, and then I know the second one will be an index out of range. It is out of range because when you say array, the 13th element I don't have. I have 0, 1, and 2. So I will have index out of range exception. Very good. And then I will just say error again. Right, and then I will have this, and then what I will do there, I will just say okay, and let me just have a write line, and I will just say so I said here error in the first calculation of result in the try block. So what I'm simply trying to say to the user is just that this generated an error, and then here I will try to say this generated an error. This is just me trying to be super specific about what is happening here. So error occurred in the second calculation of the array elements. This is me. So I can just have chosen to say here maybe error in the first catch block, and I could have just said here error in the second catch block, but I want to be very specific, very specific. And then when I am there, I will just have a write line, and then I will just have error dot message. Okay, and when all that is done, I can try to run this code. I can try to run my code and see exactly what is going to happen here. So this is exactly what I can do. And then I press Ctrl F5. And this is what I have. And we have error occurred in the first calculation of result in the try block. So I know that's where the error has occurred. And then secondly, now it says now attempted to divide by 0. So the first thing that it did was to print out this message that I had, and then here it specified exactly the type of error. It's attempted to divide by 0. Very important, very important. Right, be that as it may, I can cut and I can paste, and I can try to run this. And now when I run this, look what we have. Error occurred in the second calculation of the array elements. Index was out of the bounds of the array. Now it is pointing to which one? This one. Very important. So the first occurrence of the error, let me show you something. Let me show you something. Let me show you something here. In other words, you see, there's an error here, and it says error occurred in the first calculation of the result in the try block, and it bypassed which one? This one, because this is also an error. And then it just say attempted to divide by 0 because I have error.message. Very important. And then during the first occurrence of the error, as we have read, it will skip whatever that is coming after this code. It will go and search for a catch block that matches the error that has occurred, and then it will print that for us. This is very important that we understand. Highly important. Right, we have read that in theory. Let me just try to read that for you once again. Right. When an exception is thrown and multiple catch blocks are present, the catch blocks are examined in sequence until a match is found. The matching catch block then executes and each remaining catch block is bypassed. This is just what we have seen. We have already, in fact, we tried by all means to look into that. As soon as the exception occurs, the logic transfers to the catch block, which leaves the rest of the statement in the try block unexecuted. We saw that. because the first occurrence of an error was here, the rest of the statement inside of the try block were bypassed, and it went on to search for the correct match of the try block, and then it executed that inside of the catch. Right, that is fine. There's no problem with that. I believe and hope that we have understood exactly what is happening, and then we interchanged, take this one on top, this one on the bottom, and we saw the very same results. Right, so this is fine. We can just include one more thing, which we call the finally block, and see exactly how things might transpire. So this one will always and always execute. So after you have this catch block, you can just have the finally, and this one will always and always just execute whatever it will execute this one. So you can just have a right line in here, and you can say oops as a way of showing that there was an error that is occurred. And we can try to run our code, and this one will always execute. This one will always and always execute. So as just a way of showing that an error has occurred. Okay guys, I think we are fine, and we have understood. And then when we meet again, we will look at handling exceptions thrown from outside methods, and then we will continue with our code. So this is all what I had for you, and I will see you in the next tutorial.